After going through the process of syncing our lives on earth with God's clock in the heavens, we began the 10-day countdown to Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, considered by many people as the holiest day of the year. Nehemiah insisted that we travel to a place far to the north that is considered to be the eyes and ears of Israel overlooking Lebanon and Syria.
Hey, do you know how to get up to the top of Mount Hermon? I'm a little lost. Do you know how to get up to the top of Mount Hermon? No?
After an eventful trek to the top of Mount Hermon, Nehemiah tried to be the voice of Israel until this happened.
My name is Nehemiah Gordon, and I'm standing here at the highest place in all of Israel, Mount Hermon, the peak of Mount Hermon. Next to me are these observation posts that look down into Syria, and standing behind me, stretching out behind me, is the country of Syria. And there's a soldier approaching me who's probably going to kick us off the mountain. But let me tell you why this place is so special to me.
Even after being detained, interrogated, and sent down the mountain by an IDF commander, he claims his innocence.
What happened, Hermon?
I admit nothing.
Nehemiah wanted to finish his proclamation on our way down the mountain. I, on the other hand, wanted to beg the IDF for forgiveness.
I'm gonna let Nehemiah talk.
Hi, I'm Nehemiah Gordon, and Keith and I are up here on Mount Hermon, the highest place in Israel. And it's a beautiful mountain that you can see for many miles away. And they call it the Eyes of Israel because up on the peak, up there, you can actually see in one direction, they say you can see Damascus in Syria, and all the way in the other direction you can see the Mediterranean. And it's a beautiful place, and it's actually, when I go up there, it actually reminds me of this verse, Psalm 89, where it says, the north and the south, you created them, Tabor and Hermon, in your name they sing. When I go up there and I hear the howling winds, I hear in their beauty and majesty of those places them proclaiming the name, Yehovah, Yehovah, in your name they sing.
Man. Well, I will say, folks, we just came down from Hermon, and Nehemiah was our tour guide, and he innocently led me once again into a situation that, let me just put it to you this way, I don't even know how to put it. Let me just say this. We went to a place, and
we tried to do this video on top of Mount Hermon at the peak.
We went to the very highest part of Hermon.
And we actually blew the shofar there on the very top of Hermon, on the Eyes of Israel, as they call it, looking out over Syria and Israel.
So if people are listening, I need to let you know what happened.
And then they kicked us out.
No, they didn't kick us out. They detained us. Rightly so, because we were in a unauthorized military zone. This time, honestly, we did it innocently. Would you say it was innocent? The lady said, would you tell him what the lady said?
So we asked the lady at they have a ski lift that takes you to the top of Mount Hermon, and we asked the lady there, we said, where are we, do you have a map where we're allowed to go, where we're not allowed to go? She said, just go until you hit the barrier, and maybe they'll let you go past there, and if they stop, you don't go past there. And so we walk and we walk and we walk, and no one stops us.
No one stopped us. And if there's anyone listening right now that's a part of the Israeli military, listen, we are completely innocent. All I want to say is this: we really did go there to make a declaration in the presence of those that we really do support. We support the military here. We had a great time down in Eilat. I was so excited to come up to Hermon because what I wanted to do is I wanted to remind people all over the world that Israel is in conflict, but it isn't something we should be completely surprised about. In Genesis, I think it's 32, 33, somewhere Genesis 32, 33, Jacob had a wrestling match with the angel of God, and Jacob said, I'm not gonna let you go until you bless me. And when I see that, when I think about that, they got down into the dirt and into the dust. I mean, it was a legitimate wrestling match, and he said, I'm not gonna let you go until you bless me. And then the angel said, what is your name? He said, Jacob. He said, no longer shall your name be Jacob, but it shall be Yisrael, which is at the root of that word is the only time this root is used is for Yisrael. It is the idea of contending. Can I say this, Nehemiah? Being in a fight. And right now, Israel is in the middle of a fight. I mean, behind us, you've got Assyria, you've got all sorts of people that would just assume have Israel be wiped off the map, but I'm here to let you know something, Israel, and those that are listening, and those that should support Israel. We have got to expect there's going to be a fight. In the midst of that fight, there will be the ability to prevail. I pray that we would hold on to the God of Israel and trust him 100% and completely. To my military brothers and sisters, we thank you for what you're doing. We are honored that you're doing what you're doing. We don't want to do anything to put anything at risk, so certainly we're not going to do that, but we did want to come to this place to let it be known that Yehovah Hu Elohim, Yehovah, he is God, and we also want it to be declared that the nations would hear. And can I just also say this? I mean, this might be a little
I want them to hear this in Damascus.
Yeah, okay.
I want them to hear this in Tel Aviv. Yehovah Hu Elohim. Woo!
Okay, listen, I want to say something to the United States of America.
They need to hear this in Washington. They need to hear this in London and in Moscow. Yehovah Hu Elohim.
Yeah, you can see who's excited now. I'm still a little bit shaken by this, but I want the folks in the United States to know something. Our history was based on Israel supporting us. Check out the history of the man named Chaim Solomon, and then you get back to me about that. Who it was when we needed help, guess who helped us? Israel.
In honor of the approaching Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, he wanted to take me to the actual spot where a modern-day miracle took place. At that point, I figured I was already in way over my head, so I just kept following him. He led me to the battleground of the Yom Kippur War. You know, on the Golan Heights, smack dab next to the Syrian border. I decided to settle in and imagine what happened on that amazing day. We then ventured into the actual bunkers where Nehemiah gave a stirring history lesson that really inspired me.
I'm standing here in an Israeli bunker that was key for the defense of the country during the Yom Kippur War of 1973. In that war, Israel was attacked by surprise by Egypt and Syria, and they were completely caught off guard because it was Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the Hebrew calendar. What happened is the Syrians and the Egyptians had massed on the border, and the Israelis thought, an attack might happen at some point, but they didn't know when. And just before the holiday, a decision was made, a meeting took place with the Prime Minister and all the top military, and they decided they would let the boys go home on Yom Kippur, the boys in the reserve units, to observe this fast. And and then they'd call them up after the holiday, and that's exactly when the enemy decided to attack, knowing that the people would be weak from fasting, they would be busy in their synagogues, and they'd have difficulty getting to the front. They also knew that Orthodox Jews don't listen to the radio or watch television on Yom Kippur, and so there wouldn't be information coming about this attack to many of those people. And they actually kind of miscalculated, because what happened is you had the entire country was in synagogues all over the country. So all you had to do was go and announce in each of the synagogues that we're under attack, there's a war going on, and all the people of each neighborhood were in one place, and it made it actually easier for the military to mobilize. Whereas if it had been a different day, they would be about their business and at their work, and you wouldn't have everybody. And it was a very difficult war. Like I said, Israel was taken by surprise, and they were greatly outnumbered. Up here on the Golan Heights where we're standing, there were 177 Israeli tanks against 1,400 Syrian tanks. That actually makes it one of the largest tank battles in all of history. And the Syrians attacked by surprise, and they were victorious in the central part of the country and the southern part of the Golan Heights. And what they had to do was sweep across the Golan, and from there descend down into the heart of Israel, which was completely undefended at that point. Israel had a very thin line of defense, and behind that there was just about nothing. Well, there was one place that held out on the Golan Heights, this bunker right here where we're standing, in Hermon. And the Syrians tried for 4 days to break through this point. They sent hundreds and hundreds of tanks against the tanks defending this place, and they weren't successful. And finally, after 4 days, the Israelis were on the verge of collapse. They were actually radioing back to their base. There were only 7 tanks left, and they kept radioing back saying, "We've got to retreat, permission to retreat." And the orders kept coming in, "Don't retreat, hold on to the last man." One of the little units that had 3 tanks left started handing out hand grenades, so that when the Syrians attacked them, at least they'd take some of them with them. And they were actually out of ammunition. And at that point, they were on the verge of collapse. The 7 remaining tanks, 13 tanks show up. These were tanks that were damaged in previous battles. They had been, they were actually manned by people who escaped from the hospital in Safed, up in the Galilee. And they came to the front line, these 13 tanks, and then inexplicably, the enemy retreated. To this day, nobody knows why. It's actually one of the great mysteries of military history. If the Syrians would have just pressed on for another 15 minutes, another 30 minutes, they would have overrun all of Israel. But the Syrians retreated. And the Israelis not only saw them retreat, they then chased them all the way to the front line, all the way to the border, international border with Syria. Well, this is I think one of the great miracles of the Yom Kippur War. And you look at the numbers of what happened in this spot. This is the spot where the 77th Israeli Battalion remained, and that was part of the 7th Armored Brigade. And the attack began on the 7th day of the week, on Shabbat, which was during the 7th Hebrew month. That's when Yom Kippur is, the 7th Hebrew month. And they were fighting against the 7th Syrian Division, the 77th Battalion against the 7th Syrian Division, and there were only 7 tanks left, and they defeated them. And I think the hand of God is in all of this. And what confirms it for me is a story that's reported in this Israeli documentary called 0 Hour, in which they talk about one of the Syrian tank commanders that was captured during the battle. And he was interrogated by the Israelis, and they asked him, "Why did you stop? You could have just overrun Israel. Why did you stop?" And he said, "You would have stopped too." He said, "We looked up and we saw a line of angels, and a white hand came down from heaven, from right over there, from that spot, and said, 'Stop.' And so I stopped." And I hear this story and I say, this is amazing. This is the hand of God. Hallelujah. Praise Yehovah for his glory and his mercy. And what really excites me about this is that this battle began on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, around the exact time that the priests, the Kohanim, the direct descendants in the male line of Aaron, the brother of Moses, were in synagogues all over the country. Now they were commanded in Numbers chapter 6 to place a blessing on the people of Israel. And that day on Yom Kippur, in every synagogue in Israel, they stretched out their hands and they proclaimed the blessing, the priestly blessing from Numbers 6. Yevarechecha Yehovah v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Yehovah panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Yehovah panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And that blessing at the end in number 6, God says, "And they shall place my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them." And that day his name was placed upon Israel, and he blessed them. He saved them from utter destruction by an overwhelmingly large source, by an overwhelmingly a superior force of tanks, an enemy, and he fulfilled the blessing when it says there at the end, Yehovah will lift his face towards Israel and give them peace.
After that, I knew what, when, where, and how I wanted to honor the biblical Yom Kippur. The challenge would be to get Nehemiah to join me. When I explained what I wanted to do, he was planted in a chair in front of a television and he wasn't budging. Can you blame him? It was the rabbinical Yom Kippur in Jerusalem, one day early.
Yom Kippur is about to start, and Yom Kippur is actually the one holiday that even secular Jews observe. So actually, all of the Israeli television stations have already gone offline, stopped their broadcast, and they won't be renewed until after Yom Kippur.
After that explanation, I could hear what they call the Sabbath horn in the distance, and then in just a short period of time, Yom Kippur, according to the rabbinic calendar, would begin. I watched men in the neighborhood dressed in white on their way to begin their 24-hour fast by gathering in their local synagogues. What really caught my attention was the way that the people of the neighborhood took over the streets, because for a 24-hour period of time, there were no cars expected to drive on the streets, which meant that the next day, I was free to take to the streets myself with my borrowed Yom Kippur bicycle. The day before, this street was bustling with cars and buses. But on this day, it was time for Jewish people to walk and reflect on the past year in the quietness of nature. I wondered if the sound of my huffing and puffing was breaking up their quiet day. At one point, I was relieved to know that ambulances were on duty, just in case.
You know why they call it Mount Zion? Because you gotta go up hills.
Hey, hello, Yerushalayim! These are my cameramen!
Once I made it to the top of Mount Zion, I wondered how Muslim and Christian people acknowledged Yom Kippur. I soon found out that for the Muslims, it was business as usual. I also took the opportunity to talk to one of my old friends from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre to hear what he thought of this special day.
I don't know the difference of Yom Kippur. What the difference between the Jews and the big difference is that we believe in Jesus as the Messiah that have to come, and they don't believe in him as the Messiah.
So today is Yom Kippur over there, but here you said it.
Nothing for us. This is another day than any one day. For us, it's nothing to do with the Yom Kippur.
That answered my question. It was humbling to see Jewish people in synagogues fasting and praying, even though it was not the biblical Yom Kippur, according to God's calendar.
Well, folks, I think this is a black and white issue. I've been in the old city of Jerusalem celebrating Yom Kippur a day early. The good news is that tomorrow will be the Yom Kippur according to Scripture on the 9th evening until the 10th day. But I want to say to my Jewish brothers and sisters who've been celebrating Yom Kippur today in the old city of Jerusalem, I believe the Father in heaven looks down at his sons and daughters and smiles. Now I've got a real issue. I've got to find a way to get home before the sun goes down on my bicycle. Pray for me. I got some people that are making fun of me talking about one man, one camera. Keith, is that really you? Is it one man, one camera? You bet it is. And the reason I'm doing this, children, don't try this at home alone without your parents. But I'm late for a very important date.
I made it back before sundown, right on time, for a classic Jewish discussion with Nehemiah and his mom regarding the confusion in the Gospels about the reckoning of time during the weekend Jesus, Yeshua, was crucified. That discussion spurred me on to spend part of the next day, which was Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, according to the biblical reckoning of time, at the Garden Tomb. I had an encounter with a man there that challenged me to do something quite radical, even for me. I had it in my heart to ascend to the place where God has set his name forever and honor that day in the most historical, biblical, and practical way I knew how.
Well, I've been, it seems like everywhere, but today is probably the most special day of this entire Time Will Tell series because it's the biblical day of Yom Kippur. And I'm up on the Temple Mount. I've been north, south, east, and west trying to find a place to be able to make a declaration. My friend has been following me, my sweeper, the guy who cleans, and he just cleaned this corner, so I'm going to try to do something and see if I can get away with it. I'm not sure. I'm probably going to get chased off here as I was from other spots, but I feel strongly that even if it means that I get in trouble, I've got to be able to come on this spot and declare today that Yehovah Hu Elohim, that is his name. But more than that, we know that on Yom Kippur, the high priest used to come in an area very close to here and say this prayer. So I'd like to share it with you. Yivarechecha Yehovah vayishmerecha. Ya'er Yehovah panav elecha vayichunecha. Yisa Yehovah panav elecha vayisim lecha shalom. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Yehovah lift up his face towards you and give you peace. And at the end it says, and thus they shall set my name upon the sons and daughters of Israel, and I indeed will bless them.
This is only a glimpse of what happened on the countdown to the biblical Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. My new perspective on the purpose and power of the Temple Mount spurred me on to 2 more years of research and revelation that deserves its own series. I can hardly wait to invite you on another journey. I'm convinced that when vision meets provision, it will be ready for you to join me right on time.